What if I told you that one of the most loving things you can do for someone is not to pretend all beliefs are the same? Now, I know that as soon as I said that statement, some people are going to either turn this off or they're going to be coming at me through the comments. And I get it, because it does sound harsh at first, especially in a culture that values tolerance above everything else. Here's the truth. Every worldview makes exclusive claims, whether it's religious or not. Welcome to the God Answers podcast, where today we will wrestle a little bit with some big questions. And we're going to do this honestly, humbly, and thoughtfully. I'm your host, Ben Fraser, and in today's podcast, we will begin the discussion on, is Christianity the right religion? And is there only one way to heaven? See, today isn't about winning arguments. It is about seeking truth, and more importantly, encountering Jesus. So before we dive into and ask which religion is right, we need to ask a more basic question. Does truth matter? Or is sincerity enough? Because the reality is, two contradictory beliefs cannot be true at the same time. Either our God is personal or he isn't. Either Jesus rose from the dead or he didn't. Either salvation is earned or it's received as grace. Here's something that ought to shock you. Most people today don't reject Christianity because they've deeply studied it. They reject it because they've been told all religions basically teach the same thing. The truth is, I've heard it all my life, growing up in a vastly different culture and coming from a place of many different religions. This statement, however, is factually incorrect. Religions don't differ on small details. They differ on the core question of reality. And those questions are, who is God? Who are we? What is wrong with the world? And how can this be fixed? So let's briefly and respectfully look at some major worldviews, not as a way to mock them, but to understand them. So here's something about atheism. Atheists believe that there is no God. The problem is ignorance, oppression, or lack of education. The solution, however, is progress, or relying on science and moral effort. And that there is a hope for a better society, but no ultimate meaning or eternal hope. The challenge is then to understand that if there is no God, then objective meaning, morality, and purpose don't truly exist because they're preferences and not truths. Hinduism. There are many gods, or one impersonal divine reality, Brahman. The problem is that of ignorance and attachment. The solution is enlightenment through reincarnation and spiritual effort. And the hope is that you get to escape the cycle of rebirth, moksha. Salvation is achieved through many lives of effort. And what about Buddhism? In Buddhism, there's no personal God. Desire causes suffering, and the solution is that is of detachment and enlightenment. And the hope is nirvana, extinction of desire and self. See, suffering is addressed, but a relationship with a loving God is absent. And then we come to Islam. Islam is that they believe in one God, Allah, strictly singular. The problem is that of disobedience, and the solution is submission, obedience, and doing good deeds. And there's this hope in a paradise. If your good outweighs the bad, then that's how you get to heaven. See, Jesus in Islam is respected, but he's not crucified, he's not risen, and he's not divine. And then we come to Judaism, where a God is one personal God. problem is sin, and the solution is obedience to the law. And the hope is awaiting the Messiah. We're waiting on someone to come save us. Jesus, however, is seen as a teacher, but not the Messiah. So the thing about Christianity is that it doesn't fit as neatly in the same categories. Why? Because it isn't primarily a philosophy or moral system. It's a rescue story. And here's what makes Christianity unique. And it separates it from every major religion. It's about grace, not achievement. When every other religion says, do better, be better, try harder, Christianity says, man, you can't save yourself. God has done for you what you couldn't do. Ephesians 2:8-9 says this, for it is by grace you have been saved through faith, not by works, so that no one can boast. See, God comes down in Christianity. He doesn't wait for us to climb up to him. He steps into human history. He takes on flesh. He suffers and he dies. And thirdly, it is about the person of Jesus. And Jesus didn't say, I'll show you the way. He says in John 14, I am the way. I am the truth and I am the life, and that no one comes to the Father except through me. See, no other religions and no other religious leaders claim to be God. They don't claim to forgive sins or to rise boldly from the dead. This means that Jesus leaves us with only a few options. If those were true, then Jesus becomes a liar, or he was delusional, or the final option that we have is that he was actually telling the truth. There is no category for Jesus as a good moral teacher. Now, coming to the part of, is there only one way to heaven? I believe that this is where many people struggle. Isn't it arrogant to say Jesus is the only way? Now, if you reframe this question, we begin to understand that truth is exclusive by nature. If a doctor says this is the only cure for this disease, and you go get a second opinion and you hear that same advice, that is the only cure for your disease in reference to what the first doctor said. We don't call that arrogance. We call that clarity. And I believe that where there is confusion, there is chaos. But where there's clarity, there's peace. See, Christianity doesn't say we are better than everyone else. It says we are more broken than we ever realized. We're more loved than we ever imagined. Lastly, the cross changes everything. If there were multiple ways to be saved, the cross wouldn't have been necessary. See, John 19:30 says Jesus' words in reference to the work done on the cross. He says, it is finished. Jesus didn't take the cross and die because it was fun. He died so we can have life and experience him forever. So I did ask the question in my life almost 15 years ago. Is Jesus the only way? And the only logical response to this question was a resounding yes in my life. And I believe that Christianity is exclusive in truth, but inclusive in invitation. See, it isn't based on race. It isn't based on morality or background. The only requirement is that you have faith in Christ. So Christianity is compelling because it explains the reality, beauty, brokenness, longing, and hope. It centers on real historical events, the resurrection. It offers grace instead of fear. And it invites us into a relationship, not a ritual. And finally, it answers our deepest question. Can I be fully known and can I be fully loved? And in Jesus, the answer is yes and yes. Thank you so much for being here and engaging with this episode of our Young and Adulting podcast. We will go in depth into this topic on February 26th at our Thomas Crossroads campus at our Young Adults gathering during our God Answers Night. I would love to see you in person there and chat more about this topic. But here's a thought I want to leave you with. Eternity is a long time to be wrong. What do I mean by this? That being right about faith is infinitely more valuable than worldly pursuits. So my challenge to you and my encouragement to you is that you keep asking those questions and you keep seeking the Lord. And I believe that He will make Himself known in those moments. See you on the next one.